Unmute. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us on this rainy night in Nashville. This is the meeting for the Jefferson Street Redevelopment District. My name is Shara Taylor. I'm an urban development specialist here at MDHA, and I'll let my colleagues introduce themselves.
Good evening. My name is Matt Loftus. I'm the Assistant Director of Urban Development here at MDHA.
And I'm Joe Kane, the Director of Urban Development. Welcome, glad you are here. We got a brief presentation we want to do at the request of Metro Council. They have asked us to go back and review our goals and objectives inside the redevelopment district, starting now, and with the hope that we would come back and take a look at them every 7 to 10 years with the folks. And Jefferson Street has been in place since 2005. So we are now ready to kind of take that look and take a look at it and see what, hear from you as to what's going on, and let you and share with you what we have, what's been accomplished in there, and hear back from you. So welcome to Zoom. I assume y'all are familiar with what's going on with Zoom, and feel free to chime in with the chat button anytime you want. And I think we're going to have a little bit of fun, I hope, and look forward to hearing from you on this presentation.
And our agenda for tonight is we'll go through a brief history of the Jefferson Street Redevelopment District, discuss its existing goals and objectives, get feedback from you about the future of Jefferson Street, and we'll do that through a website called Menti. You can go to menti.com. It's MENTI.com, and that's an interactive survey that we're using to get live feedback from you. The code that you will put in is at the top of the screen after you go to menti.com, and you can just follow along with that as we go through the slides. And finally, we'll discuss next steps for what happens after this meeting. So to get you familiarized with Menti, could you please tell us how you heard about this meeting? If you go to Menti and you put in the code, you'll see this question on your screen, and you can answer through there. And we'll give you a couple minutes to get familiar with Menti, and this is what we'll use throughout our presentation. And if you have any questions, like Joe said, you can send a message through the chat. And I just added the link in the chat for those of you who did not catch the website earlier. So far, we have one response. We'll wait a minute or two for everybody else to get on the Menti website and vote to let us know how you heard about this meeting. Thank you, Chris Jackson. Are you able to vote on Menti? All right, we'll move on to the next slide, which is also voting. Do you live, work, or own property on Jefferson Street? You can vote through Menti, and you can choose as many as apply to you.
The chat feature.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, tell them that's fine.
Yes, chat's fine.
Yes, and those of you who are sending chat messages, that's fine too. We'll keep track of those.
We are recording this this presentation, and we will upload that onto our website for people who have are not able to attend today for various reasons. So that all this information will be on our website. In addition to that, we'll post just the presentation, which I think most people will will be interested in, as well as a summary of what comes out of today's meeting.
Yes. All right, moving on to the next slide. This is a little bit of background on Jefferson, the Jefferson Street Redevelopment District. As Joe mentioned earlier, it was established in 2005 and it is scheduled to end in 2035. So it's a 30-year district. And when the redevelopment district started, the total appraised property values in 2015 were 17.7 million. And they are currently 61.7 million. This is a more detailed map of the Jefferson Street Redevelopment District. It starts here just to the west of the downtown interstate loop, and it goes out to TSU. On the other side of the interstate is the Phillips Jackson Redevelopment District. So they abut each other with the districts.
This area has the growth in this area has been about the same as what we are seeing countywide. When we have done an analysis of what was going on, it has not seen the boost that some of our other redevelopment districts have, and so there's, as you know, if you receive this notice, you obviously are out in that area. And you know about it, that there hasn't been a whole lot of new development. It's one thing that we continue to work with. Unfortunately, the district was created in 2005, not long before we ended up in the Great Recession. And that because we did have some projects going in other areas that did not help with this area. And so it has not seen that growth of the other areas, but we're going to walk through all this with you. And talk a little bit more. And then the next slide she has talks about the land uses that we're trying to encourage in this area.
Yes, so I'll just highlight a few of the land uses that are allowable on Jefferson Street. We allow single family, two family, that's a duplex, and multifamily dwellings. Multifamily would be apartment buildings. We also allow assisted living and retirement facilities, churches and university related facilities, schools and daycares, medical offices or hospitals. And we also allow general retail, but no liquor sales or adult oriented businesses are allowed. We can have restaurants with no drive-throughs. We can have nightclub, but no adult entertainment. We also allow for theaters and cultural facilities.
The uses that you saw pop up through there came from when we did our original public meetings, and we're getting feedback from people in the area as to what they wanted to see in that area. Again, that was all done in 2005, which is why we're trying to get more updates into what's going on with this as we move forward.
And we will go through each objective that is found in the redevelopment district plan, starting with objective A, harmonious land use patterns. Think of this as when you're walking down Jefferson Street, do the developments make sense to you? Do they flow to you? Do they seem like they fit together? So if you're walking down Jefferson Street and you see a huge apartment building, then you see a tiny historic home, and then you see a nightclub, does that make sense to you? Or if you have a row of small retail, neighborhood retail, does that make sense to you? And we would like to know that, in your opinion, how would you rate Jefferson Street's harmonious land use patterns? You can do this on Menti. The website and the code are at the top, and they are also in the chat. Is it great? Is it good? Is it fair? Or is there something more we could do to make Jefferson Street more harmonious? We'll give you a couple minutes to answer through Menti before we move on to the next slide. And you can also send us your thoughts in the chat. We're checking those too. And we are keeping a record of the chat, so we'll have that information to inform us going forward. All right, we got one vote for poor, all right, through the chat. One for harmonious, two opposite ends there. Anybody else? We're gonna move on in a few seconds. All right, thanks for your feedback. We'll move on to the next slide. Objective B is to provide for the redevelopment of the project area. This includes land assembly, which is when you have multiple parcels that can be combined to build a single development. And this apartment building with retail at the bottom is an example of that. It had been 3 separate parcels, and the developer combined the parcels to build one large apartment building, or medium-sized apartment building. Objective C is to eliminate substandard property, which doesn't necessarily mean tearing it down. It could mean to do facade renovations. These are some pictures I took earlier this week about some properties that I thought maybe could use a little refreshing on the outside, just to give it a little bit more curb appeal. Again, this is to also clear and provide for redevelopment, which folds into making the area attractive to developers to come in and build or rehab existing structures. And objective E is to assure the future stability of Jefferson Street. And we do that through a number of ways, including our design review committee, which meets twice a month to discuss projects that are proposed along Jefferson Street. We also do that through our land use plan, which is in reference to the land uses we laid out earlier, as well as our general design guidelines and the planning department's Nashville Next initiative. Now, how would you rate the redevelopment that has taken place on Jefferson Street so far? You can vote on Menti, or you can send your comments through the chat. We'll give you a minute to respond, to let us know your thoughts on the redevelopment that has happened. All right, we have one fair vote, minimal. Mr. Jackson, would you say that is fair or poor? What would you consider minimal? We are not trying to make Jefferson Street look like 5 Points or the Gulch. We want Jefferson Street to look like Jefferson Street. That's why we're engaging the community to get feedback on your thoughts about where it is and where it could potentially go. All right, we're going to move on to the next slide. We have an objective to provide for relocation for businesses if that becomes necessary. Objective G is to eliminate and prevent blight. Again, this references our design review committee, which enforces design standards to make sure people are building quality developments along Jefferson Street. Also the general design guidelines and the land use plan. We would also like to see vacant lots eliminated, because when you have a vacant lot, you have an inactive space. And when you have inactive space, it breaks up the vibe of the street. There's not really a good flow. You just have large areas of nothing happening. And we don't want that to be the case. These are 2 vacant lots I saw along Jefferson Street earlier this week. We'd also like to revitalize commercial uses. These are just two pictures I took of commercial spaces. This is the retail center at DB Todd and Jefferson, which is very active already. And this is the former Knockout Wings, which is undergoing some type of redevelopment now. Your opinion, what kinds of businesses are needed on Jefferson Street? What would you like to see come into the neighborhood? You can vote through Menti or you can send it through chat. So for this meeting, we sent out notices to property owners. But if you know someone who's not here, who should be here, please let them know. We will have a follow-up meeting in January. We would like to engage as many people as possible. This is the first meeting we've had like this. So we're hoping that the word gets passed that we are holding these meetings.
We have, we did limit our mailing to those individuals inside the redevelopment district. So of course, that is a narrow group. It did not bleed all the way out into the neighborhood at this point in time, because it is more concerned about what those property owners, because these restrictions impact the property owners directly, but we do want to hear absolutely from what the surrounding neighbors want to see. We unfortunately don't have a good list of to be able to send out through electronically through email, but we certainly hope that people will forward these around to other people.
We did not choose a local church because the pandemic is still going on, but we, at some point when it's safer, we will have in-person meetings. All right, we're gonna move on to the next slide. Objective J is to have new public improvements. So this refers to the infrastructure of Jefferson Street. In these two pictures, you can see the sidewalks, you can see the light poles in the middle of the sidewalk. This individual doesn't have a good place to place their garbage can without getting in the way of pedestrians. You can see that the sidewalks are narrow, and the material changes as you walk down Jefferson Street. So it's not the most comfortable experience all the way down, and we would like to see improvements in that. We also have a goal to enhance historic preservation in Jefferson Street. Like we said, we want it to look like Jefferson Street and not like any other part of Nashville. This is a retail area that has historic buildings, just as an example to show you what we would like to preserve. How would you rate Jefferson Street's preservation of historic structures? Do you think we've done a good job with that? Do you think it could be better? Do you think it's great, good, fair, or poor in terms of preserving the historic structures? We'll give you a couple minutes to respond. We have one good in the chat. Good, but can be enhanced. Fair definitely needs enhancement. Okay. That's 3. Anybody else? Need to keep its history. Yes, I agree. All right, we're gonna move on to the next slide. And what do you think we can do? What can MDHA do to continue improving Jefferson Street? What would you like to see happen in the next 10 to 20 years on Jefferson Street? And again, you can respond through Menti or through the chat. Find positive alternatives for abandoned buildings. Yes, within planning, we call that adaptive reuse, which is certainly a possibility. Historical essence is important. I would like to see a balanced history and new development without tearing down. Okay, that is important. What else do you think would improve Jefferson Street? All right, we're gonna move on to the next slide. And if you would like to keep in touch, like us to keep in touch with you, you can provide your name and your email address on this screen. We're the only ones who will be able to see that information, but we will be able to email you updates about the next meeting and send out the PowerPoint that we're presenting tonight. And I also, on the next screen, I'll have my contact information so you can email or call me directly. Give folks a couple minutes to fill that out.
So we've my personal opinion is I hate these meetings where we can't see people. We appreciate you being here. Unfortunately, we don't, well, fortunately and unfortunately, we don't have as much turnout as we want to, but fortunately, that means we will be able to open this up. I think this will be very controllable because we don't have a lot of people trying to all talk at one time. So Cher's going to turn on so people can come in and really talk and express what you have wanted to. Because we did try, we reached out, we tried to get into some community spaces. We're unavailable going through the parks and libraries to try and get some sort of space with that. The recommendation to hit the church, thank you very much. We will certainly, we will reach out to them and see as well. Pleasant Green is right there in the community. I think it'd be a great idea to that. We do appreciate you giving that information to us. But right now, if you got some comments, we would love to hear from you and get your thoughts and be able to give you some feedback now or take down your considerations and be able to get back to you again at our next meeting. It's up there on the screen. The next meeting is going to be held in January, second week of January, January 12th. And we want to get some more information out to everybody. So if you got something you want to ask, please raise your hand and we'll go from there.
Alethea, you can unmute yourself now.
All right, thank you, and good evening to everyone, and I appreciate having the opportunity to speak. I just have a clarifying question. I would like to know, it was stated about not seeing the boost. Can you elaborate on what boost you're seeing or what you're not seeing, or maybe that was shared? Like, are we just talking about like the productivity of businesses? Is that
It's the private dollar investments coming into the area. Jefferson, you know, if you've been there, you know, Jefferson Street area has lacked some of that private development coming into it. That someone mentioned something about the Gulch. Obviously, the Gulch has had a massive amount of private investment coming into that area that has not come into Jefferson Street. A lot of that, I believe, is due to, you know, Jefferson Street was traditionally, you know, smaller individual lots in there, and getting large scale investment and large scale development to come in is not very practical. It's very difficult to assemble property. Very few people have large amounts of property assembled that could make private development available. And so those have been some of the things that have not happened in there, just due to the nature of what's in there. It's not a lot different from what we've seen. I think you mentioned 5 Points earlier. It's not a lot different from what we've seen in the development of 5 Points, because it was a pre-existing, really developed area that has seen a lot of disinvestment, and we're really wait for the private sector to come back and try and bring those dollars back in, and we assist them along the way.
And I just like to share from a historical essence of being a native Nashvilleian, being here all my life, and what I've witnessed. And at this, you know, kind of middle stage of the sector, you know, when I talk about or see a 5 Points be developed, I just think back about the tornado, of how that was traditionally a mixed area in terms of diversity, African Americans, and also other different ethnic groups living in East Nashville. A tornado comes through, and then it becomes 5 Points. That's just what I witnessed. That's just a short blend of what I've seen. When we talk about like the Gulch area, highly industrialized area, in a time period when I was a child growing up, and of course, you know, as things grow and other opportunities open other places for people and corporations to make money, those industrialized areas or businesses go and somewhere else and work, and then that leaves the land being accessible to, I guess, the private developments. When we talk about Jefferson Street, when we look from a historical essence of it being a historical African American area at the root of the colleges, Tennessee State, Fisk University, Meharry, and just where it sits, yes, it's rich in history, and we also accessible in this day and time as Nashville is growing. I can get home and work and church and play within minutes of where I live, and I live on Jefferson Street. And so I just, when we talk about having the opportunity for private developments, my question is that open to a diverse private developers, from African Americans to whoever wants to have access to the funds, or is it plan in place for the private developers to develop?
No, it's available to the private sector. The project that you saw there, the apartments on Jefferson Street, we worked with DJ Wooten on that and provided some tax increment financing, which is our ability to help make the project financially feasible. And that was one of the projects that we came into there. He was fortunate enough to be able to have assembled that property together to be able to get enough to be able to do a project. And so, no, we work with, we would love to see a diversity of developers come into the area to be able to make this a more productive area, get it back to, back to the center of the commercial life that it was decades ago. And you're seeing the residential growth taking place off of Jefferson Street that kind of bringing a new diversified crowd into the area as far as the neighbors go. And that development just hasn't made its way onto Jefferson Street yet.
Thank you. And also a quick question, is it, or do you, and what is your expertise or advice? Can private development and commercial be combined, and can those that reside on Jefferson, continue to reside on Jefferson, or will it be, come like a West End Avenue?
Oh,
where
no.
it's-
The list of land uses that you saw went through there, we certainly are encouraging residential to take place on Jefferson Street as part of the uses. Obviously, the one use that we saw with that was done with the apartments brought in some commercial on the ground floor with the apartments up above it. There is residential is allowed in our plan, and we encourage that. We've looked at other projects for residential development on there. They just haven't come to fruition yet. And we support it when it comes in. It is an area that we know needs the support. And we as an agency at Metro want to provide that support.
Thank you so much for sharing. And I definitely look forward to the opportunity to meet again and definitely, seek more individuals who I know besides myself that live within these parameters to be
Sure.
present. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Barely, you're kind of low.
Okay.
Yes, I would like to ask a question regarding housing on Jefferson Street. And we do have a lot that's available, and we would like to acquire the other lot that's next to us for housing. And you mentioned that you assisted DJ Wooten in that project. Is that assistance done through just a repayment, or what is that? Is it a loan type of assistance or grant or what?
It acts as a grant. It is a loan, and that is repaid by property taxes. As the project develops, what we're doing is we're taking a portion of the property taxes that the property pays and being able to utilize that to retire, to make annual debt payments for the project. So we have some information about that on our website under tax increment financing, and would be glad to discuss that some more. As part of this process on community meetings, we are going to have a separate set of meetings that deal with tax increment financing and how that program can assist developers.
Thank you, and I would be interested in participating in those as well.
Great.
And Chris, just to kind of chime in a little bit on that too, I know it's been mentioned on, who's going to take advantage of the investment opportunities on Jefferson Street. And I think it's our goal, and I think the goal sort of citywide, that those that live and work around Jefferson Street now are going to be the ones that will be able to participate in its growth going forward and capitalize on that. So knowing that existing property owner willing to assemble property to sort of to get a project off the ground on Jefferson Street is exactly the kind of activity that we're looking for. And so just thanks for bringing that up.
Joyce, you had your hand raised. Do you still have a question?
I don't have a question. I just have a comment.
Okay.
I certainly, I was gained information about this meeting from my mother, who lives in the area. And of course, I grew up there. And again, I think it's been addressed. My concern is just that there needs to be more publicity about the meetings. And then there needs to be an effort to make them accessible to people who would not otherwise be able to use Zoom or use a computer.
Okay. We
Okay.
are listening to that. We will take that into account for our follow-up meeting.
Yeah, my mother got the card, and she doesn't have a computer, nor does she even know what Zoom is.
Okay.
She's 95, but she has certainly a great historical perspective of Jefferson Street since she has lived there all her life, and would like to. And she's always been involved in community meetings, but could not do this one, certainly because of the way it's set up.
Okay.
So I do hope we'll take advantage of you know, there's some churches, my church, St. Andrews, is meeting, and I know we could probably host a meeting at some point also. So I do hope we'll take advantage of the in-person meetings for folks who are not able to access.
Okay, is your
This
mom
way.
able to do in-person meetings?
Certainly, yes,
Okay.
yes. Mhm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions anybody has?
Just one
I
last
just-
thing. Can you?
Oh, we have two people talking.
All right, I think, Chris, you want to go ahead?
Yes, I was just saying that they hosted the meeting regarding the Jefferson Street cap at our church, and it was standing room only, so people will come out.
We will certainly, thank you. We will certainly reach out to the churches. As one, we did not try. We were trying some other community rooms on there. So thank you for bringing that to our attention, and we'll redouble our efforts to do that. And we'll probably offer it also. We'll probably do a blend meeting where it'll also be broadcast, so people who are unable to get out of their homes or do not want to be in the crowds will be able to chime in as well. So thank you for that. And I think Lethea, I think you were next with the question.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Quick question, and I know, can you please summarize once again the objective of this meeting? Was this introductory meeting? What was the objective again for this particular meeting today?
So the objective for this meeting, what was that, 2019, Metro Council introduced legislation that said that we needed to reach out to the community in our redevelopment districts every 7 to 10 years to get feedback on how the districts have performed and what they would like to see going forward. So this is our first meeting for Jefferson Street. So it is acting as an introductory meeting, but we wanted to hear from people who live there, who work there, what they think about the redevelopment that has taken place and what they would like to see going forward.
Okay, thank you again, Ms. Taylor.
You're welcome. And on the screen now is my contact information. You can contact me directly by email or by calling me. I usually respond within a couple of hours, and I do respond. So feel free to reach out to me anytime, any questions, any comments, any concerns. If you have recommendations on where we could hold the next meeting in person, please feel free to reach out to me.
All right. Well, I appreciate everybody's time to this and being able to join us here today. So we are going to have a follow-up meeting. We're going to kind of summarize some of the answers we've gotten back from you, and then we will post that on our website. Those of you who have given us your website, we will directly send you those links in there. Otherwise, it will be, you may have to click a couple spaces on the MDHA website to be able to get to where this information is, and we will follow this up with our second meeting, and hopefully we will be in person and be able to do a hybrid meeting and be able to get both people virtually and in person. So if there's no other questions, I appreciate you coming, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. You all have a good night. I look forward to meeting again. Have a great one.
You too.
You too.